Back in the ancient days of Egypt, mighty Pharaoh ruled the land with a rod of iron, especially towards our people, who were his slaves. Moses, our leader, seeing our people suffering, pleaded with God to make Pharaoh set us free. So God answered Moses' prayer and told him to go with Aaron the priest to Pharaoh and demand the release of his people. So Moses and Aaron went and did what God said. But Pharaoh was angry at the very thought of their demands and refused Moses. So Moses wasn't sure what to do next. Then God told Moses to use his rod, performing signs and wonders, to show Pharaoh exactly who is boss. After Pharaoh saw mighty miracles that God did through Moses, including many plagues that covered the land of Egypt, he was overwhelmed and decided to let our people go. We came out of Egypt unto a strange land, where God guided with his mighty hand. We lived on heavenly manna that fell to the ground, like dewdrops gently falling, that did not make a sound, like heavenly falling dew, drops that spread all around. When we escaped from Pharaoh's hand, things went like we planned. Searched the desert for a home, but no place could be found. Then we saw the promised land. It was glorious and beautiful to see. Then we made a vow we would never be slaves again, never again. Not long after we departed from Egypt, Pharaoh suddenly became furious and changed his mind, regretting he'd ever let us go in the first place. Then he gathered his armies together and began chasing after us. Upon hearing the galloping noises of Pharaoh's armies riding their horses in the distance, our people were terrified and cried out to God. Then God told Moses to use his rod. So Moses obeyed God and stretched out his rod, which immediately divided the sea down the middle, rolling back the waters to either side, like two huge long scrolls, which created a pathway for us to walk through. Meanwhile, Pharaoh and his armies were determined to follow. However, as soon as they entered the sea and took the same path, Moses again stretched out his rod over the waters, which quickly rolled back into place, flooding their tracks. Upon reaching the other side, we were greatly relieved that we had escaped the clutches of Pharaoh's armies. Everyone celebrated and danced for joy. However, that day was only the very beginning of a very long journey. We would have arrived at the promised land much sooner, but due to unbelief, we ended up travelling aimlessly around the desert for 40 long years. We wandered the desert 40 long years, until the land sown in blackness and tears. We gathered in the harvest from morning till late day, then rested and saw God, remembering to pray. Rested and saw God, remembering to pray. When we escaped from Pharaoh's hand, things weren't like we planned. Searched the desert for a home, but no place could be found. Then we reached promised land. It was glorious, so beautiful to see. We made a vow we would never be slaves again, never again. Some of our people were frustrated and fed up with the journey taking so long, and wondered if they would ever reach the promised land. Very soon they started complaining to Moses, saying they wanted to return to Egypt, where they would be much better off eating their beloved garlics and leeks. Nonetheless, the journey continued because God remained with us. God led us through the desert by a cloud during the day, and a pillar of fire by night, so we could find our way. We pitched our tents under bright stars above, surrounded by angels under God's watchful love. Surrounded by angels under God's watchful love. When we escaped from Pharaoh's hand, things weren't like we planned. Searched the desert for a home, but no place could be found. One day we saw that promised land was glorious, so beautiful to see. Then we made a vow we would never be slaves again, never again. Finally, as we got nearer to the promised land, it became increasingly difficult to carry on, because everyone was very thirsty and there was no water. Then God told Moses to strike the rock, just once, from which water would flow to drink. But Moses struck the rock twice instead. Even so, the water came gushing out of the rock. However, Moses was not allowed to enter the promised land with everyone else due to his disobedience of striking the rock twice instead of once like God told him to. Therefore, God appointed Aaron to lead the way in his place. though Moses had to remain behind and live in the desert, before he died, God allowed him to have a glimpse of the promised land, but only from a distance. Whereupon Aaron took Moses to the top of the mountainside and showed him the promised land from afar. When Moses saw how beautiful it was, his soul was satisfied, knowing that after roaming 40 long years in the wilderness, our people could now enjoy a better life and at last have a country of their own.